The Shern Dominion prided itself on conquest through dominance. A species bred for war, their military doctrine was simple: overwhelm, occupy, assimilate. Worlds across 3 spiral arms had fallen to their legions. Resistance was crushed in days, sometimes hours. Jarek 4, a Class 3 colonial world, settled by humans, was expected to fall in one swift sweep. General Sarek, decorated veteran of 70 planetary campaigns, arrived with full confidence. His flagship broke through Jarek's thin upper atmosphere. Flanked by dropships and cruisers, from orbit the planet appeared lush, but sparsely populated. Sensors picked up minor structures, outposts, crop fields, small energy grids. No planetary defenses, no satellites, no fleet in orbit. It was almost insulting. "Where's their resistance?" Commander Zoral asked, squinting at the tactical display. No shielding, no broadcasts, no impulses. "Are they sleeping?" Sarek didn't reply. His mandibles twitched slightly, antennae rigid. Even if the humans had retreated into bunkers or gone to ground, something should be happening. Radio silence wasn't just suspicious, it was deliberate. Within hours, Dominion troops landed and spread through the colony zones. They moved cautiously. At first, tactical sweeps, motion detectors, full aerial reconnaissance, but what they found was unnerving. The colony buildings were still standing clean, organized, fully intact. Dining halls had trays still on the tables, half-eaten meals, now cold. Personal items, tools, datapads, and even children's toys were left as if dropped mid-use. One trooper reported a home with a shower still running, but no people, no human bodies, no heat signatures, no signs of combat. It looked like the entire colony had simply vanished. Sarek established central command in what looked like the human administrative dome. He deployed drones to scour the deeper terrain and orbital scans to seek out tunnels or cloaking devices. None of it made sense. "We've missed them," Zoral said again. "They must have known we were coming and fled." Sarek shook his broad head. "No, they left it to clean, to open. This is a message." Still, standard procedure dictated securing the area and preparing for reinforcement. Engineers erected shielding arrays. Communication hubs were established. Patrols fanned out to secure the perimeter. Orders were given for round-the-clock. Surveillance. Then came the first sign that something was off. A soldier named Rinth woke screaming in his bunk. He claimed to have seen a figure in his dream stall, pale, human. The figure didn't speak but simply stared at him while flames burned in the background. Medics ruled it stress. Rinth was sedated and placed on rest orders. Within a day, 4 more soldiers had similar nightmares. One described being buried alive, while a calm voice whispered Earth's nursery rhymes in his ear. Another spoke of floating in space with a chain wrapped around his chest, pulling him toward a bright red planet. Some of them cried. Others grew violent. Sarek, already uneasy with the initial silence, began to worry. It wasn't unusual for war to fray nerves, but this wasn't a war. No one had fired a shot. The soldiers weren't reacting to combat, they were reacting to nothing at all. Soon, command began receiving unusual sensor feedback. Drones would go offline without cause, only to return minutes later with altered footage, showing flickering humanoid shapes at the edge of the frame. One drone caught a glimpse of a face pressed against a window in an abandoned outpost. When reviewed, the timestamp showed it had occurred during daylight when the outpost was supposedly empty. Sarek reviewed the recordings personally. In one, he swore he heard something beneath the static of the audio, a soft whisper. Not speech. Breathing. Within days, paranoia began to spread through the lower ranks. Rumors whispered in mess halls that humans were hiding in plain sight, that the base was haunted. The dreams weren't dreams anymore, they were messages. Sarek increased security. No one was allowed alone. Sleep rotations were halved. Still, the hallucinations grew worse. Sarek's own adjutant, a proud warrior named Lorak, had a breakdown in the command tent, screaming that his skin had been replaced with human flesh. "They're watching from the corners of my vision," he shrieked. "Don't you see them? They never blink." he was restrained and sedated. But the fear had taken root. As the sun set on the quiet plains of Jarok 4, Sarek stood outside, surveying the silent battlefield. The wind carried no sound. The air was still, yet something pressed against his mind, a feeling he couldn't name. The humans were here, not with guns, not with ships, but with something else. Something that moved behind the eyes and whispered when you blinked. The war, it seemed, had already begun. The physical battlefield remained eerily quiet. No ambushes, no human soldiers, no weapons fired inside the Dominion encampment. Chaos festered like a sickness. It started small individuals reporting strange dreams like before. But the dreams intensified. Soldiers began experiencing full-blown hallucinations during waking hours. One swore he saw a child standing outside the fence line at dusk, eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. When the squad rushed to investigate, there was nothing but footprints leading in. None leading out. Another squad heard laughter over the radio, distorted, glitching human laughter. The audio log confirmed something had transmitted, but technicians couldn't trace the source. The laughter was low, rhythmic, looped. One of the techs had to be removed from his console after he began banging his head against it, screaming that he couldn't get the sound out. General Sarek's growing unease hardened into anger. He gathered his command team. "This is psychological. Warfare," he growled. "Not magic, not superstition. A tactic. The humans have technology we haven't seen." "Or biology," said Krell, his intelligence officer. "Something in the atmosphere, perhaps? A neuroagent? A nanite field? Could be a weapon we don't detect as one?" Sarek shook his head. "Then why no casualties? Why not just kill us?" By the whispers. The dreams. Krell hesitated. "Because they don't want us dead, General. They want us broken." The idea hit like a cold wave. Sarek dismissed the meeting and ordered every unit to wear sealed helmets. Thinking perhaps environmental exposure was the cause, it made no difference. That night, over 50 personnel reported conversations while alone. No voices over comms. No messages, just thoughts that weren't their own. Soldiers described hearing unfamiliar opinions, memories, even arguments and voices that didn't belong to anyone nearby. Some were comforting. Others were terrifying. One officer calmly explained during a medical check that a voice named Rachel was advising her on how to avoid Sarek's traps. Sarek reviewed a new piece of footage from a northern outpost drone. The feed showed thick mist rolling in from the nearby canyon, nothing unusual, until movement flickered inside the haze. Humanoid silhouettes emerged, just barely visible. No weapons. Standing there, one was holding a sign. "Zoom," Sarek ordered, and the image sharpened into chilling clarity. The sign read, "How's your mind holding up?" His mandibles clenched. This wasn't random. This was curated, designed. But what disturbed him more than the sign was the expressions of the figures holding it. Calm, confident, amused. The next morning, 2 perimeter guards failed to check in. Surveillance showed them walking away from their posts and heading straight into the desert. They carried no packs, no water, no weapons. It's just their uniforms and a blank, tranquil expression. One of them, caught briefly on audio, said before vanishing, "Into the sand, I'm going to see her. She said she'd show me the real stars." No one followed them. Not because they didn't want to, but because everyone feared what they might find if they did. Soon, entire patrol squads were requesting reassignment due to auditory intrusion. Some reported hearing Earthsong's old melodies, children's tunes, even jazz. One medic began tapping a beat on the walls during surgery, humming a tune no Shern had ever known. Yet it matched a human lullaby from pre-contact Earth. When questioned, he said he'd never heard of Earth music before, but the rhythm had been in his head for days. Panic spread in subtle ways. Officers stopped sharing bunk rooms. Sleep became fragmented and shallow. No one trusted the silence anymore. Even the wind felt manipulated, like it carried meaning. In its rustle, more than a dozen troopers attempted to damage their own communication implants, convinced that the voices were coming through them. A few succeeded. Medical tents overflowed with patients who were physically unharmed, but mentally unraveling. Sarek considered evacuation. But to leave now, without firing a shot, would be a stain on the Dominion's honor. It was unacceptable. He ordered stricter mental screening, doubled the watch shifts, and confined anyone showing symptoms. It didn't help. Even Sarek himself had begun hearing things scratches along the inside of the walls, soft clicks when no one else was in the room. It's a sensation of being watched during every moment of stillness. During one late-night inspection, Sarek found himself standing outside, staring into the hills for nearly 30 minutes, unable to recall how he got there. His breath came in shallow bursts. He had the distinct impression that something was smiling behind his eyes. He locked himself in his command tent for hours. Outside, the wind blew softly across the empty plains. By the third week of the Shuren occupation of Jarek IV, no human soldier had been seen. No shots had been fired. No resistance had occurred in any traditional sense. And yet, the once proud Dominion war machine was beginning to collapse not from outside pressure, but from rot within the mind. The battlefield was still physically, no battles, no ruins, no visible threat. Its psychological contagion spread like wildfire through the ranks. Entire regiments stopped following orders. Orders were questioned, doubted, ignored altogether. Troopers wandered through the base like sleepwalkers, muttering to themselves in broken human dialects. Officers who tried to enforce discipline were met with wide-eyed stares or hollow laughter. "General Sarek," said Krell, during a rare moment of composure we no longer control. "This army, we're not fighting the humans. We're fighting ourselves." It was an admission that shook the tent like an aftershock. Sarek refused to believe it, but deep down, he knew it was true. That morning, 6 technicians refused to operate the power generator. They said the machine was speaking in Earth frequencies. When pushed, one technician began sobbing uncontrollably, clutching his helmet to his chest and whispering, "It hums the song she used to sing to me," before I even knew who she was. They were taken to medical only for the medics to begin exhibiting similar symptoms hours later. Some soldiers began reporting time displacement. They'd fall asleep for an hour, but awaken believing days had passed. One believed he had grown old and died as a human on Earth, only to wake up again back in his alien body. Another claimed he'd lived through an entire war as a Terran sniper, complete with memories, emotions, and battle scars that didn't exist. Whatever the humans had unleashed, it wasn't simply illusion. It was memory manipulation, identity, erosion, a rewriting of the very self. Sarek watched it unfold with horror. His officers looked at him like he was a stranger. Some stopped saluting. A few even flinched at his approach, whispering among themselves in half-spoken English phrases. The deeper issue was clear. They weren't just seeing human visions. They were becoming human. It wasn't physical transformation. It was cognitive. The Dominion soldiers were absorbing human thought patterns, emotional structures, even cultural memories. The minds of the enemy were being overwritten not by a virus, but by ideas. A new surveillance recording surfaced an internal camera in one of the abandoned agricultural domes. The footage showed a Dominion soldier kneeling before an old Earth child's doll, hands trembling, tears in his eyes. He whispered something over and over. When Sarek had the audio enhanced, the whisper chilled him to his core. "Mommy, I'm sorry I left. That soldier had no mother, no family. He'd been born in a Dominion hatchery at that moment." The entire system broke. One of the forward defense outposts turned their weapons inward. 4 turrets locked on their own command tent and opened fire. The automated AI had been disabled, replaced by manual control. The soldiers inside 7 high-ranking commanders were found dead beneath. A scrawled message in the sand, "We weren't strong enough to keep them out." Sarek paced inside his private command dome, hands trembling. He hadn't slept in 2 days, not truly. Every time he closed his eyes, she returned. The same human woman, blonde hair, soft smile. Her name wasn't known to him, and yet it felt like she'd known him forever. "You're tired, Sarek," she'd whisper. "Let it go. We don't need to fight." He snapped awake each time, drenched in sweat, fingers clawing at his face. Krell returned with the worst news yet. "We have confirmation," he said grimly. "Human PSOPs teams have been on-world since before we landed, inserted early. Never shown themselves. No weapons, no troops, just tech. Neurological disruptors, sonic implanters, dream-guided conditioning. They've been seeding us from the start." Sarek stared, stunned. "So we were never in control." "We walked onto their stage," Krell said, "and played their script." That night, the sky erupted, not with fire, but with symbols, enormous holograms projected into the atmosphere. Giant human faces, some laughing, others calm, all staring down from above like gods. One of them slowly mouthed words in ancient Terran English. "We're already inside." Soldiers across the valley fell to their knees. Others screamed. Few began shooting blindly at the sky. One battalion. Commander tried to rally his troops, but found his voice drowned out by a chorus of whispers from nowhere. He collapsed, clutching his ears and sobbing. General Sarek sat in silence, his claws digging into the metal floor. Round him, his army crumbled into psychological ruin. The battlefield was quiet. General Sarek's command tent had become a sanctuary of silence. Final island of supposed sanity in an ocean of psychological ruin. But even within its reinforced walls, the whispers crept in. The general hadn't slept in nearly 3 days. Not because he didn't want to, but because sleep now meant something far worse than fatigue. It meant entry. Every time his eyes drifted shut, she returned. The same human woman. Always in the same white dress. Always with the same calm eyes. "You don't have to fight anymore, Sarek," she whispered. "Just rest. We'll carry you home." And he'd jolt awake in a cold sweat, the faint echo of Terran lullabies still ringing in his ears. Across the shattered base, Dominion soldiers no longer walked in squads. They shuffled, muttered, or sat in stillness. Fires were left unattended, patrols ignored, command structures dissolved. Some built strange sculptures out of weapons and crates abstract, too sure in eyes but eerily human in style. Others carved earthwords into walls, phrases they couldn't possibly understand. "Welcome back. Safer inside," and she showed me the sky. Sarek called what remained of his inner circle, only for answered. Then his uniform disheveled, eyes sunken, voice flat. "It's over," General Krell said. "No," Sarek growled, gripping the edge of the war table. "We'll cleanse this world. Find every PSYOP operative. Burn their devices. Restore discipline." Krell said nothing. Instead, he slid a data pad across the table. This came in from orbit. Surveillance drone caught it near the western cliffs. Sarek activated the footage. A clearing. Dozens of Shern soldiers stood in a circle. At the center, a human figure, unarmed, female, calm. She made no threats, no speeches. She simply looked at each soldier and smiled. One by one, the Shern soldiers began to kneel, not out of worship but as if in surrender, as if letting go. Then came the voiceover. Not from the woman, but from the footage itself. A quiet human voice, embedded subliminally in the feed. "War is noisy. Healing is quiet. Let us show you silence." Sarek slammed the datapad onto the floor. "This is blasphemy," shouted. "They infect us not with weapons, but with ideas. They've hijacked our very perception. We cannot let them win this way." But even his voice was uncertain. He felt it, like a splinter in his mind. The pressure, the calm, the gentle tide pulling at his fury. His anger had no purchase. It slid off the walls of his thoughts like oil on glass. He tried to raise a new directive force, a coordinated strike to locate and eliminate the human PSOP agents. But the responses were chilling. "Already taken, General. Can't tell who's still clean." She said we shouldn't fight anymore. He marched to the communication hub himself, demanding control. But there, in the center of the room, floated a new broadcast across all Dominion frequencies. A single image. A live feed. A human, sitting in a chair, perfectly composed, looking straight into the camera. She smiled. "Hello, General," she said softly. "We've never met, but I've spent time in your thoughts." Sarek's jaw clenched. "We didn't come to kill you," she continued. "Came to set you free." "Free from what?" growled. "From what they built you to be," she replied. "A tool, a weapon, a hammer never taught to build. You don't even know what peace feels like, do you?" Sarek tried to cut the feed. The controls didn't respond. The human leaned forward. "Here," she whispered. "Let me show you something." Screen flickered and Sarek saw himself, but not as he was. As a human, sitting under a Terran sun, smiling. Surrounded by people, friends, a family, laughing, at peace. The image lasted only a moment, but the effect was shattering. Sarek fell backward, gasping, claws trembling. No, this isn't real. It's not me. The seed had been planted. The soldier who saw the broadcast reported similar illusions, memories of lives not lived, joy never felt, warmth never known. A vision of a world that whispered, "You could have had this." Across the encampment, weapons were dropped, helmets removed, screams turned to silence, and sobbing. Then stillness. Krell approached Sarek. "Once more, we were never trained for this, General. It's a war of identity." Sarek collapsed into his command chair. "What do I do?" he whispered. Krell placed a hand on his shoulder, no longer as an officer but as a fellow broken mind. "We listen," he said. "They've already won." The war ended when they entered our thoughts. The sky outside darkened. Another projection shimmered above. A human child drawing with chalk, writing in big letters, "Peace begins where fear ends." By the time the Shurn Dominion's relief fleet arrived in orbit over Jarek 4, there were no battles left to fight. No sounds of war, no flashes of artillery, no human armies to face, only silence. "General," Sarek did not request extraction. No emergency. BROADCAST was sent. The request came from an automated system-man, old Dominion failsafe that activated when command ceased. All function for 72 hours. What the relief forces found was a scene no military analyst could have predicted. The central base had not been destroyed or attacked. It remained fully intact, though power fluctuated erratically. Dominion banners still hung on some buildings, but many were defaced or had been replaced entirely with crude sketches, carvings, or human symbols. There was no structural damage, no impact craters, no evidence of weapon deployment tone either. Side, the only thing broken was the people. Out of the 25,000 soldiers originally deployed, less than 7,000 were still coherent enough to respond to basic commands. Most sat on the ground, still and unmoving. Some were huddled together, whispering in fractured Earth languages. Others stared at the sky with vacant expressions when approached by the recovery crews. Many Shurn soldiers asked strange questions. "Do you hear her voice too? Am I real? Or just what they made me? Why did they show us peace? It hurts." A few simply wept and asked to go back to the dreams. Medical personnel conducted scans and found no physical illness, no poisons, no biological agents. Their bodies were healthy. Their minds, however, showed signs of extreme neurological restructuring resembling deep hypnosis, trauma rewiring, or dream-implanted identity shifts. In a secure chamber of the command dome, General Sarek was found, alive but seated silently in the dark. He had written hundreds of phrases across the walls, floor, even his armor. Most were in Terran English. "I saw the sky with her. She showed me a life I never lived."
Ow.
The war ended with a smile. "Do not fight the silence. It loves you." He did not resist when medical officers approached. He looked up at them and whispered, "Tell High Command. We never stood a chance." The PS Ops campaign by the human operatives was later reviewed. In one of the most classified Dominion intelligence briefings ever assembled, there were no bodies found, or no physical evidence of the humans themselves. Only fragmented drone footage, psychological collapse reports, and residual effects dreams, hallucinations, and foreign memories embedded deep within the minds of thousands. The humans had come to Jarek 4 weeks before the invasion, bedding themselves in untraceable stealth suits, inserting neurowave emitters, resonance field devices, and emotional dampeners. They never attacked directly. They simply waited, seeding confusion, emotional contrast, and a sense of longing in the Shern psyche. It wasn't just terror the humans used, it was hope. They showed the Shern a world outside the cage of duty, of conquest, of endless marching. They whispered what it felt like to laugh, to be held, to belong. They didn't make the Shern surrender. They made them want to. The Dominion High Command declared Jarok for a total failure, but chose not to retaliate. They didn't dare. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't need ships, that doesn't fire, that wins wars without ever standing in front of you? They quietly pulled forces from nearby human colonies, choosing instead to fortify distant sectors. But paranoia began to spread. Officers now feared dreams. Soldiers asked to be assigned only to machines. Entire regiments were grounded, deemed psychologically unfit for deployment. The war had shifted, and Earth hadn't even raised its voice. Back on Earth? Deep in a black site under the Andes, PS Ops Command compiled the final report on the operation mission. Operation Dusk WHISP, your objective: neutralize invading Shern force via non-lethal psychological disruption, casualties, human, 0 enemy, 0 physically operational. Effectiveness to 100%. Last page of the report held a simple quote from a PSOP's. Operative victory isn't about crushing them. It's about making them realize they never wanted to fight us in the first place. Back in orbit, a Shern scout vessel flew over the surface of Jarek 4 one final time. A low-resolution camera picked up one last haunting image, carved deep into a cliffside near the abandoned base. It was written in massive letters, visible from above. The battlefield was quiet until your minds began to break, and beneath it, in flawless Dominion script, one final sentence: next time don't. Bring guns. Bring questions.